So I decided to start watching Evangelion.
Love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything. All it takes is some time and some clarity to find your identity. It's mind over everything.
Yeah, so there were plenty of requests for me to make an analysis on this one, and I found it on Netflix just before I was about to cancel my account, but I thought maybe this could be the last great hurrah that I watch on Netflix before I join the great canceling. And I figured if there was ever going to be a time to watch a classic anime show, doing it now and calling it my job was a good option. Who doesn't want to feel productive and important while watching cartoons? In all seriousness though, I have been avoiding Evangelion for about a decade. And yeah, it's only now that I finally started watching it, being 3 episodes in at the time of recording, and I have to admit, it doesn't seem all that intimidating. Almost makes me forget why I've been avoiding it this whole time. You'd think this anime would be right up my alley. You know, since I'm a fan of philosophical Japanese animations where child soldiers operate giant war machines. But I do have to admit that I was actually simultaneously intimidated and disturbed by some of the stuff I've heard about Neon Genesis Evangelion, which caused me to avoid it this whole time. I do live under a tropical rock, but even I've heard a lot about this show. I basically already know the story. It's been around since the 90s after all. I know it's a confusing storyline that mixes biblical imagery, concepts of the Kabbalah, Gnostic mysticism, transhumanism, technological singularity shenanigans. Why oh why can't the Japanese make a simple giant robot cartoon without getting me into an existential crisis? The stuff I heard about Evangelion when I was in high school was a little more disconcerting than usual, with the possible exception of Berserk. I remember my friend saying, "Hey Pilgrim, you want to study philosophy as your university major in college, right? You should watch Evangelion. It's based on Freudianism and Nietzscheanism and discusses the Bible." But then they'd say a bunch of stuff out of context that made no sense to me. Like, there were 2 fruits, the fruit of knowledge and the fruit of life. Angels picked the fruit of life, but humans picked the fruit of knowledge. Yep, what? Huh, actual angels? So it's humans in Mecha fighting angels, the actual biblical angels who are portrayed as Dalmatian kaijus? Huh, not as weird as actual biblical angels, but less cool if I do say so myself.
Be not afraid.
Then when my friend said, "There's an episode where the protagonists enter a tunnel and they find a massive monster nailed to a cross." And I'm like,
what the fuck?
Then I asked one of my friends, "Hey bro, I saw the trailer and it was talking about how only the kids could pilot the giant mecha. Why kids?" And he's like, "Oh, that's because the robots are actually their parents." And I'm like,
What the fuck?
I'm not sure if any of this is true or if I misunderstood him or I'm operating off of misconceptions, but yeah, I heard a bunch of muddled stuff in high school. Sue me. But the real doozy was this one time when my friend was like, "Actually, Pilgrim, I changed my mind. You shouldn't watch Evangelion. It can be quite disturbing and you're a bit of a wuss when it comes to this kind of stuff." And I'm like, "What? No, I'm not. What could be so bad?" And he's like, "No, I mean it. It's disturbing even for me." So I thought, what could possibly be so disturbing? Brutal deaths of innocent children? Really bad gore? Or just a really negative philosophical outlook on life that infects your brain and turns you into a pessimistic cynic by convincing you that life isn't worth living?
Everything looks and sounds like shit to you. It's a condition called being a cynical asshole.
Oh no.
Yes.
Turns out no. Nothing could have prepared me for what my friend actually said next. He's like, "There's this one scene where the girl gets sent to the hospital and she's unconscious and then the main character goes to visit her."
Some of you guys in the comments know where I'm going with this, don't you?
And my friend says, "Then he ends up seeing her breast by accident and then the camera suddenly flips and then..." I'll never forget what he said next. I just wasn't expecting it. Like, A traumatized war veteran, he whispered. And the camera cuts back to his hand, and it's full of semen.
Soon may the Wellerman come.
And I'm like, eat the boar! Yeah, that was one of the minor reasons. Things that kept me from watching the show. It was a little difficult to take it seriously after hearing that. But even so, that isn't what really held me back from watching it thus far. Because in the end, as much as I hate to admit it, it's all pretty standard anime BS, right? None of this is unique to Evangelion. Let's see. Strange biblical misconceptions and enigmatic Christian imagery used by a culture that doesn't really understand it? Check. An emphasis on intergenerational relationships between older and younger folks, maybe a conflict between the young and old? Check. And really uncomfortable insinuations? Check. One extremely unnecessary and disturbing scene the writers just throw in there for heaven knows what ungodly reason? Check. Like an Attack on Titan, where that upside-down food torture scene that almost made me give up on the whole show. You guys can call me a wuss all you want. It is what it is. I don't like this kind of crap. However, what really kept me from watching Evangelion all this time is all the stuff I heard about the ending. If you haven't watched the ending to Evangelion, like myself, don't worry, since I don't really know much about it, and there's nothing I can say that can really spoil exactly what goes on, because I don't really know what happens. I just know it's trippy, and either extremely tragic or nihilistic. And it's the possibility of the latter why I never got around to watching this thing, despite it being one of the great anime sci-fi classics. As those of you who've been watching my channel for a while know, I'm not one for nihilism. There's no point in watching something that tells me that there's no point to doing anything in life, right? It's like, okay, buddy, I'll take you up on the message of your story by not caring at all about what your story says, much less taking the time to watch it. There's no point to watch it if there's no point to life, right? However, with the amount of requests I got to watch this show and how beloved this anime is, I did begin to wonder whether this show was truly as psychedelic and intentionally confusing and trippy, disjointed, and meaningless as some have said, or if that could all be a misunderstanding, and it could actually be that the ending to Evangelion is instead just highly complex and tragic, and only my high IQ viewers can truly appreciate its complexity. And if I wish to prove I have a high IQ, I have to watch the show and see if I can make sense of the supposed batshit insanity at the end. Meme references and jokes aside, there is actually a difference between the complex and tragic with the psychedelic and nihilistic. Worlds of difference, actually. The psychedelic is based on vivid and intense but disjointed experiences which are confusing because they lack a logical connection between events, while the complex has a clear logic and reason behind everything. It just takes plenty of effort to discern the hidden logic. One cannot be understood because there's nothing to understand, and one can in fact be understood. You just need to be high IQ. Complexity has reason to it, while the psychedelic has none. It's just the equivalent of random flashing colors. And the difference between the two is actually similar to the difference between the tragic and the nihilistic. You see, just because I view nihilistic endings as absolutely terrible and a waste of time for any story, that doesn't actually mean that I think that every story needs a happy ending, where the hero and the princess ride off into the sunset on a unicorn farting rainbow candy. Tragedy as an ancient genre of storytelling is actually highly meaningful and cathartic. Negative consequences playing out on a protagonist's and character's choices who made bad decisions or didn't make bad decisions but suffer the incredible hardship of reality itself can in fact be highly meaningful because the story might be indicating something true that we should learn from. Like how war is caused by older generations and ruins the lives and hopes and dreams of younger generations. Or how the blind will to power can ruin even the bond between family members and make you bang your mom. Or how there's no greater love than to give your life for someone else and bang someone else's mom. All these stories have sadder endings than Waiting for Godot, for instance, which I was forced to read in high school. That crap didn't even have an ending, really, but nothing left me more pissed off than having to be graded on the value of understanding a book whose message was that nothing really mattered or could really be understood. Really? You gave me a B- for saying this book was stupid? Absurdism is all about how existence is stupid, and if that's true, then it would include the book itself. Give me an A+, Mrs. Helen! Anyway, I was contemplating this after all the requests down in the comments, and that made me finally decide to give Evangelion a chance. I'm curious as to what the experience will lead to and whether or not it'll be tragic, but meaningful, or just a total waste of time with a nihilistic ending, or how the French say, tutel poupou. If it turns out to be the latter, I admit I will be a little pissed, but I think it's worth the risk to experience the story with you guys.
Nah, I'm just kidding. I don't care about any of this crap. I'm actually just watching the show because of this wonderful meme.
But there's this big war trying to basically destroy humanity because humanity has free will, and there's a decision to which level we want to go to. We have free will, so evil's allowed to come and contend, not just good. And the elites themselves believe they're racing using human technology to try to take our best minds and build some type of breakaway civilization where they're going to merge with machines, transcend, and break away from the failed species that is man, which is kind of like a false transmission because they're thinking what they are is ugly and bad, projecting it onto themselves instead of believing, no, it's a human test about building us up. That they wanted to build a giant artificial system. And Google believes that the first artificial intelligence will be a supercomputer based on the neuron activities of the hive mind of humanity with billions of people wired into it with the Internet of Things. And so all of our thoughts go into it, and we're actually building a computer that has real neurons in real time that's also psychically connected to us, that are organic creatures. But the big secret is, once you have a crystal ball and know the future, you can add stimuli beforehand and make decisions that control the future. And so then it's the end of consciousness and free will for individuals, as we know, and a true 2.0 in a very bad way, hive mind consciousness with an AI jacked into everyone, knowing our hopes and dreams, delivering it to us. There's now a human counterstrike taking place to shut this off before it gets fully into place and to block these systems and to try to have an actual debate about where humanity goes before humanity's destroyed.
Wow, that's crazy, bro. So yeah, I finished the first 3 episodes and I'm on my way through the 4th one. And so far, despite all the notoriety, the show is pretty standard anime mecha stuff. Young protagonist with a special ability that makes him essential to save humanity. And he's a bit of a loser, though, so that he can stand in for the audience. That's us. We're the losers. There's the obligatory blue-haired anime waifu. By the way, this chick reminds me of Rem from ReZero, but I don't know what to make of that. Oh, and there's the underage stuff that I kept talking about, the innuendo stuff. Prison-level crap. It already shows up from the 2nd episode. This lady is a danger to children, that's all I'm saying. However, despite all these standard anime tropes, which is interesting to see from a show made in the 90s, since we're seeing them metastasize this thing, I can also already see that it's unique in setting and it's very cleverly written. One sign of good writing is how cliches are used, but a clever spin is put on them, making it original, which conveys traditional storytelling arcs, which are overdone because they're good, but done with an original and fresh take. I'm referring to how they give us the impression, in the 2nd episode, I think, that Shinji loses the initial fight with the angel, but then later on the next episode it's revealed that he actually won, but in a very traumatic and mysterious way, involving mysterious forces yet to be explained. And it's not that Shinji is a typical anime overpowered badass, quite the opposite. He's actually powerless and has no real control of what's happening. He's not powerful because he's in control. He's powerful because he's actually powerless and used as a puppet by forces which wield the true power through him. And his father is in on it. Very interesting stuff. I really want to see how that turns out. Also, speaking of higher powers, the religious aspect and imagery is very intriguing as well. From what I gathered from everything I've heard about the show, it's very singularity techno-gnostic vibe thing, interpreting theological concepts through computers and artificial intelligence. Kind of like The Matrix, or an Isaac Arthur video. There's a mysterious cabal and secret society type thing behind the scenes that are focusing on knowledge as a means to transcendence. The angels are themselves intriguing threats, but they're not exactly the villains. You can tell that the real villains are probably the human characters, some of them anyway, because nothing is as it seems after all. plans within plans. I'm actually quite excited to keep watching and seeing where it all leads. And when I'm done, I'll make a proper analysis for you guys about the show. It might end up being therapeutic, especially if the ending is as much of a mind fudge as everyone says it is. Getting my thoughts out in a monetized video might at least make the experience somewhat worthwhile. And what I am most curious to find out is whether or not the ending is nihilistic and hopeless or just tragic, but with a poignant and cathartic message for us as the audience. Even though I'm well aware that I shouldn't expect a happy ending, and I don't. Alright guys, so this is Pilgrim from the future. I just wanted to add a few things before this video ends. I'm around 13 to 14 episodes in now. I have a pretty good idea of how Evangelion's gonna end. And I wanted to just say that I am thankful for you guys telling me to watch this. Jose Hernandez, special shout out to you. Thank you for being persistent. This is well worth it. I do admit that from a Catholic perspective, which is what I have, a lot of the theological perspectives are not very flattering. And to be honest, I kinda understand what an Asian man feels sometimes when a Western work of fiction is shitting all over his spiritual and religious heritage, even if it's in a cool way. But even so, even with some of the questionable decisions and how Evangelion displays Christian theology and the Christian cosmological worldview, I do very much like the fact that the anime is giving us an opportunity to discuss this in the culture. At least it gives me an excuse, for instance, to discuss theology in this channel, which is about pop culture, right? So yeah, I have 2 more videos coming up. One where I will analyze more deeply the theological aspects of Evangelion, and another one which will come out soon. I'll let that be a surprise. And anyway, yeah, back to Past Pilgrim. But what do you guys think of all this? Is there any other anime I should give a try and watch for this channel? Let me know down in the comments. Anyway, I'd like to thank my patrons who are walking this YouTube pilgrimage with me. You guys are indeed mighty companions and true legends. Thank you all for listening to my ramblings, and have a good day, my friends.
And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. 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 Don't be scared. Just look up. Don't be scared.